Hey Scott, so first weekly check-in, really like the amount of videos that you sent along with your questions. Go ahead and keep them coming if you ever have any. Let's go ahead and start with looking at some of the questions, and I'll go ahead and break down two of the videos that you sent me and then also address them with some movement drills. To start, the questions. Okay, so should I wear a belt? Should I wear belt sleeves and Olympic shoes, or do you prefer I do barefoot? So me personally, I really like the idea of a lifter being barefoot. I really, really like that. As they get closer to a meet, let's say, obviously that's not going to be the case because you have to compete in some kind of shoe. Here at Kabuki Strength, we're really big fans of minimalist kinds of shoes. We have to keep in mind that Ollie shoes were meant for just that, Olympic lifting. Oftentimes, people use it as a crutch for lax and ankle mobility and things of that nature, and it actually makes a lot of these issues worse. It's like putting a Band-Aid on something that needs stitches. So when you squat barefoot, for example, your feet literally get stronger. You get better at rooting, which helps you in every single facet of movement. So I really like the idea of going barefoot. In general, though, our philosophy is if you feel way stronger in Olympic shoes for one reason or another, though we're not a huge fan of it, no big deal. Go ahead and keep on rocking the Olympic shoes. Now, when it comes to a belt, I do very much like wearing a belt, especially for squats and deadlifts, because the idea of it basically, if it's just increasing muscle recruitment and stabilization by using your body better, by giving your midsection a kind of a tactile cue or something to press up against. So it actually increases the amount of core that you use, along with several other muscle groups that's been proven through studies. So I very much like the belt, wearing a belt pretty much all the time or as much as possible. But with that being said, I also like it to be wearing a little looser, so you give your body the ability to diaphragmatically breathe. One of the biggest faults I notice is that people wear the belt way too tight, take a big old chest breath, and then ruin their bracing capabilities by treating a belt almost like a crutch. So yes, big fan of belt. In terms of reps and reserve, so being completely honest, I didn't have a complete understanding of this question, but I think it might be better if I just explain reps and reserve a little bit. So basically what reps and reserve are is if I write for you, let's go 3 sets of 5 squat. 3 sets of 5 squat with 3 to 4 reps in reserve. So what that means is that by the time you get done with a set of 5 reps, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're done with the set, you should get done, rack it, and go, you know what, I could have done 3 or 4 more reps at least. That's 3 or 4 reps in reserve. If you get done with that set and you go, man, that was tough. I don't think I could have done any more. Or maybe I could have done only 1 more. That fits under the 0 to 1 rep in reserve, which obviously wasn't our intent because I wrote down 3 to 4 reps in reserve. So basically, it's just a subjective indicator to get you to read your body even better. And on top of that, the subjective indicator kind of adapts to where your body is in terms of central nervous system ability to produce force on a day-to-day basis. So I very much like reps in reserve, and that's basically the idea of it. First set should be, if I write 3 to 4 reps in reserve, first set should feel like that, second set should feel like that, and third set should feel like that. And oftentimes, if somebody's not very well conditioned or they're on a new rep cycle, sometimes they might have to decrease weight on the third set, for example, because the second set might have felt like more like 2 to 3 reps in reserve. So they're kind of fatiguing as they go, which is fairly common. But that's basically what it is. If you have any more questions on it, please let me know and I can explain it further. Is reps in reserve for each set or across all sets? I think I kind of answered that. It's for all sets. So like I said, if your third set, you can't do a set of 5 and still have 3 to 4 reps in reserve, then go ahead and decrease the weight. And when it comes to pin presses, ideally, the way that they're done is that we're going to go ahead, unrack the weight nice and slow down. We touch the rack. We let the rack feel the full amount of weight. The rack, let's say it's a person, should feel every single pound of that weight, but you're still gripping the shit out of the bar. You're still staying tight, staying really, really tight and rigid. And then when it comes time to actually press it, kind of treat it like a 1-count pause almost. It's not really a 1-count pause, almost like a competition-style bench. Stop the motion, bring it up. But yeah, so it should feel the full amount of weight, but one of the biggest mistakes people make is they go down, the bar touches here, and then they relax and then try to push it up. That's a recipe for injury, and on top of that, it's not going to be nearly as efficient. So what we're really looking for is to stay tight as possible and make sure the rack actually feels all the weight. The last thing we want to do is actually bounce or lose tension at the bottom. So I think that's about it for these questions. We'll go ahead and look at a video next. All right, so this is the big one. This is the one I really wanted to cover in depth. In squats, is definitely something I want to tackle in terms of movement plan and trying to get it to move better. Some of the biggest things I noticed right from the start is that you are really tight in your shoulders. You have a fairly high bar position, but still your elbows are really far out, which tells me that you don't quite have the shoulder mobility to get your elbows further under you. We have to keep in mind that your lats are a spinal stabilizer, and the only way we contract them and use them efficiently in a squat is to treat the squat like a lat pull down, to pull the barbell down. But if you can imagine doing a lat pull down from this position, this elbow position, it wouldn't work very well. You wouldn't get a good lat contraction or a very efficient movement. So what we need to do is bring these elbows further under you, and that way we can fully stabilize our spine, have full lat engagement, and be as efficient as possible with our upper body as well as lower. After winning what he calls a stalking majority in the general election. These people gave Now, what just happened there is that we went into extension. So you'll see that lumbar extension oftentimes happens at the top when people really think about sitting back fast and they kind of ignore their body's natural full proportion and keep their chest a little too upright. So if you notice there, one more time, you'll notice that your lumbar literally extends and curves just a little bit, which loses our ability to brace as effectively, and on top of that, changes the length-tension relationship of our muscles downstream. What it'll do is it'll lengthen our hamstrings, shorten our quads, and do a bunch of other things to the small muscles in our hips. So oftentimes people have a series of different injuries to the tensor fascia latae, for example, and a series of other hip injuries, along with just decreased power output by the primary movers in your legs. So we really want to avoid that extension that takes place right there. Right there is when it happens. And one of the ways we know it happens is how the belt moves. And you'll also notice that oftentimes when people go to extension, you'll see flexion at the bottom or butt wink. So that's where we really see it, is at the bottom of this, bam, that butt wink at the bottom, which causes your first initial third of the squat on the way up to be quite slow, and then you power through. But that's 100% not a strength issue. It has to do with your stability and ability to keep your spine composed under load. So what we need to do for that situation there is we need to work on the hinging mechanics for 1. 2, we likely need to get better, a little bit better at least, at breathing and bracing. So hinging mechanics, breathing and bracing. And then 3, I really want to focus on, if anything, limiting your depth a little bit and taking a little slow on the eccentric portion. Right now, you're going extension at the top, you're going slow, and then you dump into the hole. And that's a recipe for not being very efficient and not keeping good tension. And I personally did that for a long number of years, especially when I just got out of collegiate athletics. I was a college wrestler, i.e., there it is, the year. But college wrestler really depended upon muscle elasticity. And when I first started getting into powerlifting, I would go nice and slow on the way down and then just drop 100 miles into the hole. I was a lot faster than what you're doing currently. And what I eventually noticed is that I topped out around 405 and I couldn't get past certain barriers. So eventually I just had to do a lot of tempo work, take it slower, and really have a controlled squat through and through. So again, the biggest things is going to be starting back over. Biggest things, breathing and bracing, likely need to get a little better at it, really filling that belt, creating tension against that belt. Hinging mechanics, we got to get better at hinging with our entire body instead of just going to extension, because again, the second we go into extension, it has a series of different negative effects. And lastly, going a little bit slower on the way down and possibly limiting depth just a little bit, especially if our goal is to increase total and get stronger, because we don't have to go quite that deep, especially if we're losing tension in that bottom portion. Moving on to deadlift. Bam, I'll go back here. Where is it? Sorry, bear with me here. I think it was this one. Beautiful. All right, so here, your deadlift's really solid. I've already looked at all these videos, by the way, and your deadlift's really solid. The one thing we can improve on is actually the first rep. The first rep sets the pace and the efficiency for the next however many reps you have until you complete the set. And one thing I'm noticing is we're having issues with tension building. You're keeping a neutral spine. Your rep on the way up is nice and efficient, but right here, ideally, our hips get closer to the bar, our knees go to plates, and our chest comes up as we build tension nicely nice and slow, and the bar should be bending like crazy as we press into the floor with our feet. But instead, what's happening is to build tension, we're just kind of dropping our hips down and not really taking much tension from the bar. Let's go ahead and see it here. Good start, hips nice and high, and then we just kind of drop down and go from there. Now, as you can see, as you go through your reps, the second rep, because you have so much tension, second rep, third rep, fourth rep, looks a lot better and moves a lot faster because of it, because you have far better tension. But keep in mind, we can do all of that in the first rep, which will have us lifting much, much heavier loads if we just get a little better at tension building. I'll go ahead and send you a really good video on tension building that will greatly benefit you. But right now, that's probably the biggest thing with the sumo. Sumo looks great. Your bench press actually, I saw videos of it earlier. I won't cover on here because it looks really, really good and I have nothing to note really. But with the sumo deadlift, the only thing I really need you to improve on is just getting a little bit better at building tension, focusing on pressing your floor through the feet. And keep in mind, by the time that you actually pull yourself in a position, the bar should go from here and then slowly bend, weight starts to come up, and then fire up the second you've taken all the slack out of the bar. The biggest thing I want to focus on is going to be squat. Deadlift's a bit secondary because I think the squat has the most room for improvement. And yeah, I think that's just about it for this week. Let me know if you have any questions whatsoever.